Well, thank you, Tommy. I hope you don't mind if I, in front of all these young, impressionable people, call you Tommy. My good friend Tommy Ko. Before I get started, I have to tell you, when I first was able to begin talking with colleagues and experts and friends about coming to Singapore, there was one name that always came up, Tommy Ko. It didn't matter who you were talking with, who you were speaking to, from any walk of life, business, government, academia. It always came down to one name. You need to go talk to Tommy Ko. And so I was so delighted when on my first day in Singapore, I was still getting over the jet lag. I didn't know which way was up, and I was dealing with the heat and all the other issues that hit you. I walk up 3 steps of a business, and right there he is. Hand out, he says, "Hello, I'm Tommy Ko." Fantastic. Man is everywhere. So, Greg, thank you for the nice introduction, and what an honor to be on campus with this group of young people. I am keenly aware that tonight's program is competing with, I think, the largest Starbucks in all of Asia. So, if I see you peeling off in the back row, we know where we'll find you. I also want to tell you that while this is not really my maiden voyage, this is one of the first times I'm going to try to give my speech from an iPad. So I hope you'll bear with me to show you I don't have the confidence you young people do in technology. I brought an old-fashioned backup with me. And I must say I'm delighted to be part of this program, and it's a special honor to know that this forum is so willing to take on very hard questions. It's not an easy thing to do, but in my view, it's exactly what should be happening on important college campuses like the one here at NUS. And it bodes very well, I must say, Greg, for the promise of this program as well as the other 3 colleges that will eventually be fully developed here. So our question today is, can the U.S. live, what does it say, peacefully with the rise of China? And I suppose I could answer this very quickly and say yes, and have a seat, and we can move on, because Professor Ko, I subscribe to the second school of thought you described in your introduction, which is this is a new day. We live in a world where the rise of China is not a zero-sum game, and indeed should come at the cost of no country, and certainly will come at no cost to the United States. And it's really, from the perspective of the United States, not so much a question of whether the United States can live with the peaceful rise of China, but more that the United States welcomes the peaceful rise of China, because it's the U.S. and global interests can only be served with the peaceful rising China, and a China that is committed to supporting the institutions and mechanisms that promote rule of law, transparency, peace, and stability, the very same things that will enable China to build on what has already been phenomenal growth, the growth it has achieved in just these past 2 decades. And of course, as Professor Ko has mentioned, there are those, even in the United States, who worry that our country is committed to containing China's rise. And I find in my conversations it makes no difference to some of the people who subscribe to that school of thought that President Obama and his cabinet have repeatedly said that our engagement in Asia is not a containment policy aimed at China. So let's step back a moment and just look at some of the evidence, because there is much. It was the United States that pushed for China's accession to the World Trade Organization. It was the United States who argued strongly to bring China into the global, rules-based trading architecture, and China's economy, no doubt, has benefited tremendously from doing so. And we believe that the leadership in China also recognizes it is in China's interest to continue to engage in a cooperative, positive, peaceful, and constructive relationship with the United States. Some of you, especially the professors, no doubt, are familiar with Secretary Hillary Clinton's 2011 editorial in Foreign Policy. And in her editorial, the Secretary laid out our vision for reinvigorating our long-standing engagement with Asia. It's not new. This is something that President Obama and the administration has focused on all along since first coming to office in January of 2009. It's indeed been one of the 3 American foreign policy goals. Just as a reminder, President Obama, during the presidential campaign in 2007 and 2008, and almost immediately upon taking office, outlined 3 basic foreign policy goals. First was to reframe the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I think we've done so. Second was to reset, the word we used was reset relations with Russia. Some of those of you who pay close attention even remember Secretary Clinton going to Moscow with a giant reset button and presenting it to President Medvedev. And then the third, and most importantly for tonight's conversation and this forum, was to re-engage in Asia. It was our goal to return to the intense engagement that has traditionally existed with the United States presence here in Asia since the conclusion of World War II. And it's Secretary Clinton's first overseas trip as Secretary of State was to Asia. And a historical fact is that that's the first time a U.S. Secretary of State has chosen Asia for their first visit since Dean Rusk did so in 1961. It was an important signal of where we were headed when we took office, and our strategy of rebalancing American policy is notable, I think, for its lack of contentiousness. Its lack of contentiousness here in Asia, and in the campaign season that has already been mentioned, its lack of contentiousness in the United States, where our engagement in Asia has a history of bipartisan support. And it continues, despite all of the campaign rhetoric and the reference of some of the strong comments made as part of the ongoing campaign, to receive broad support on both sides of the political aisle in the United States Congress. It focuses on renewing and deepening our already strong relations with our partners, and there's no partner better than Singapore for the United States in Asia, but of course with others throughout the region, as well as building new partnerships and perhaps most importantly, engaging with regional multilateral institutions, and of course expanding trade and investment as the American economy continues to be an increasingly important part of the globalized, interconnected, and interdependent trade and investment relationships. Now, while the relationship with China is not the sum of our deepening engagement in the region, of course, it's an essential part of that engagement. So it's worthy repeating, I think, that it is our interest in developing a positive, cooperative, peaceful, and comprehensive relationship with China because it's central to our broader Asia-Pacific policy and the re-engagement announced by President Obama in 2009. The President has, of course, made clear that our full and active engagement in the region's multilateral architecture helps us to reinforce the system of rules, responsibilities, and norms that underlie regional peace, stability, and prosperity.